Aircraft carriers are among the most recognizable symbols of naval power, and a prominent feature of these warships is the large numbers painted on their decks and islands. These numbers, known as hull numbers, serve a specific purpose. Today, we'll explore why the U.S. Navy displays these numbers so prominently, their importance, and how they differ from carriers in other navies like China and Russia. Number 1. What are hull numbers? Hull numbers are the large, prominent numbers painted on U.S. Navy aircraft carriers to serve as unique identifiers for each ship. Every carrier has an official designation that combines a prefix with a sequential number. The prefix CVN stands for Carrier Vessel Nuclear, indicating that the ship is a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. Following this prefix is a number that identifies the carrier's position in the sequence of commissioned ships. For example, the USS Gerald R. Ford is designated as CVN 78, meaning it's the 78th carrier in the U.S. Navy's lineup, and its hull number is simply 78. This system of hull numbers makes it easy to distinguish one carrier from another, especially in large fleets where multiple carriers may be present. The numbers help not just in communication, but also for visual identification from a distance, particularly during complex flight operations where accurate recognition is critical. Unlike some other navies, such as those of China and Russia, which often recognize their carriers primarily by name, the U.S. Navy emphasizes both the name and hull number. This dual identification system enhances safety, helps pilots quickly identify their assigned carrier, and ensures efficient coordination during naval operations. Number 2. The history behind large hull numbers. In the early days of aircraft carriers, the hull numbers painted on the ships were much smaller than they are today. This worked when carrier fleets were smaller and operations were simpler. However, as the number of carriers in operation grew and flight operations became more complex, the Navy faced challenges in identifying ships quickly, especially from the air. One of the most significant issues that arose was pilots landing on the wrong carrier. This was particularly problematic during high-pressure operations, such as World War II and the Cold War, when multiple carriers operated in close proximity. Incidents of mistaken landings were not uncommon during this period, causing confusion, delays, and more critically, safety risks. Each carrier has its own procedures and crew trained for specific aircraft, so landing on the wrong carrier could disrupt operations and even result in damage to the aircraft. To address this, the U.S. Navy began painting larger hull numbers on the flight decks and islands, the towers rising above the deck of carriers. The increased size of the numbers made them visible from far distances and allowed pilots to quickly and accurately identify their assigned carrier during flight operations, drastically reducing the risk of mistakes and improving overall safety. Number 3. The practical purpose of large numbers. The large hull numbers on U.S. Navy aircraft carriers serve a practical and crucial role. They help pilots during flight operations. When aircraft carriers operate in groups, which is common during training exercises or combat missions, pilots returning from their missions need to quickly identify their assigned carrier amidst potentially multiple carriers in the area. Large, high-contrast hull numbers are especially helpful in low-visibility conditions, such as nighttime or poor weather, allowing pilots to quickly distinguish their landing target. Safety is a primary reason for these large hull numbers. Each aircraft carrier has its own specific procedures for flight deck operations, as well as a crew trained for particular aircraft types. If a pilot lands on the wrong carrier, it can disrupt operations, risk the safety of both the pilot and the crew, and lead to possible damage to the aircraft and ship. The large hull numbers act as a quick visual guide, minimizing the risk of misidentification and incorrect landings. By improving the clarity of carrier identification from the air, these numbers enhance both the safety and efficiency of complex naval flight operations, ensuring that every landing is on the right ship and conducted smoothly. Number 4. Communication and coordination at sea. Aircraft carriers rarely operate alone. They are the centerpieces of carrier strike groups, CSGs, which include destroyers, cruisers, and submarines, all working together to form a cohesive battle force. The large hull numbers painted on carriers play a critical role in communication and coordination within these groups. In busy maritime areas or combat zones, visual identification is essential for quick and clear communication between ships. Large hull numbers make it easy for other vessels in the strike group to identify the carrier, ensuring smooth coordination during operations. This visual clarity is particularly important when maneuvering, relaying orders, or managing flight operations, as multiple ships and aircraft operate in close proximity. A well-identified carrier helps support vessels understand their position in relation to the main ship and quickly respond to changes in strategy or movement. Additionally, when U.S. Navy carriers are operating alongside other countries' navies, whether for joint exercises, humanitarian missions, or combat operations, the large numbers provide a quick visual reference. Allied forces can easily identify the carrier, fostering efficient communication and reducing the likelihood of confusion during coordinated efforts. The prominent hull numbers essentially act as a name tag for the ship at sea, aiding both internal coordination within a strike group and cooperation with external forces. Number 5. Unique numbering system of the U.S. Navy. The U.S. Navy's approach to numbering its ships stands out as distinct from many other navies. Unlike Russian or Chinese carriers, which are usually identified by their names, the U.S. Navy employs a system of hull numbers that work alongside the ship's name to streamline identification. This dual system includes a prefix and a sequential number. For aircraft carriers, the prefix CVN stands for Carrier Vessel Nuclear, indicating that the ship is a nuclear-powered carrier. For example, the USS Nimitz is designated as CVN-68, while the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower is CVN-69. The sequential hull numbers provide an organized and straightforward way to identify each carrier in the fleet. When a new carrier is commissioned, it receives the next number in the series, ensuring every ship has a unique designation. This helps avoid confusion and simplifies communication, especially when multiple carriers operate together or interact with allied navies. The sequential nature of the numbers also offers a historical perspective, as they are assigned in the order the ships are built and commissioned. The practice of using hull numbers dates back to the early 20th century, originating as a means to distinguish various classes of ships in an ever-expanding Navy fleet. Over time, as the U.S. Navy built more carriers and evolved its fleet capabilities, the numbering system grew, with each new carrier adding to the sequence. This system is not only practical for identification, but also crucial for operational planning, logistics, and record-keeping. By combining the ship's name and hull number, the U.S. Navy achieves a standardized, clear method for managing its fleet effectively, maintaining an organized structure even as the number of carriers grows and modernizes over time. Number 6. Avoiding misconceptions. There are several misconceptions about the large hull numbers on U.S. Navy aircraft carriers. One common misunderstanding is that these numbers are purely for aesthetic purposes or are part of a traditional design. In reality, their size and prominence are highly practical, rooted in the need for operational safety, efficiency, and clarity during complex naval operations. Another misconception is that the numbers indicate the ship's capabilities, rank within the fleet, or any specific role. However, these hull numbers are simply sequential identifiers given to each carrier as they are commissioned. While tradition plays a role in naval operations, the primary purpose of the hull numbers is functional. They act as crucial visual markers, especially for pilots during flight operations and in situations involving multiple ships. The U.S. Navy's goal is to ensure that pilots can quickly and accurately identify their assigned carrier, reducing the chances of miscommunication or landing errors which could have serious safety implications. In the high-paced and sometimes chaotic environment of naval aviation, the clarity provided by these large hull numbers enhances both safety and operational efficiency. Rather than being symbolic decorations, they are practical tools designed to improve coordination, communication, and the overall effectiveness of the carrier fleet.